Good morning, everybody. On November 22 in 1963, President Kennedy was killed in Dallas. And a week later, on this date, November 29, President Johnson created the Warren Commission to look into the assassination. JFK was inaugurated in January of 1961, the youngest president, first president born in the 20th century. Lots of energy. And one of the first things he did in March was establish the Peace Corps, an idealistic program for helping people in poor countries better themselves. But that same month, he was on TV telling us about Laos, and we hadn't heard of that area that much. But this is part of the beginning of our involvement in Vietnam, of course, which is a dark side. And in April '61 was the failed Bay of Pigs invasion. This was a plan that had been approved by Ike, and JFK went along with it, and it bolstered Fidel Castro and was a big embarrassment for President Kennedy. So he had ups and downs right from the beginning. In May of 1961, Alan Shepard went into outer space, the first astronaut to do that. And this is the beginning of the space program that will eventually put men on the moon in 1969. Another troubling thing for Kennedy was the building of the Berlin Wall in August of 1961. Here you can see it snaking around the Brandenburg Gate, which is in one of the main plazas in Berlin. And the next year, in February, he went to Berlin and gave his famous speech that I am a Berliner. But notice he's right near the Brandenburg Gate. So on the other side of that is the Berlin Wall. So he was up close and personal with the Berlin Wall when he was there. In July of 1962, Telstar, the first communication satellite, went into outer space. So the world is becoming a lot smaller, and our spy planes that fall take photos of Russian missiles in Cuba. And this is the Cuban Missile Crisis, in which we went eyeball to eyeball with the Russians, and they backed down, and there were some negotiations behind the scenes. And one of the results of that was this: the hotline, direct communication between the U.S. and USSR, not a red phone like in the movies. The space thing continues. In December, the first intraplanetary satellite went to Venus, Mariner 2. So lots of drama in those Kennedy years with space exploration and also with civil rights. And here's the March on Washington, 1963. Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. So this is on Kennedy's watch, too. So why did JFK go to Dallas in November of 1963? Here he is at Love Field. Well, his polls were kind of in the middle. He had ups and downs, so he goes to Dallas. And the red marks is the path of the motorcade. You can see the Texas School Book Depository building, where they found a rifle with Lee Harvey Oswald's prints on it. The 3 X's show the 3 shots. And unlike today, when everything done by the president is filmed, back then nobody really thought of it except Mr. Zapruder, a civilian with a home movie camera. And his film of the Kennedy killing is one of the key pieces of evidence into what happened on that day. So 2 days after JFK was killed, Jack Ruby on the right shot Lee Harvey Oswald. We all saw this on television. So the supposed assassin of the president himself is assassinated. And then the next day, when JFK is buried at Arlington Cemetery, the nation is full of questions about, well, what really happened on that day? So President Johnson, who was from Texas, and the killing was in Texas, he appointed the Warren Commission, and here are its members: Earl Warren in the middle, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and you might recognize on the far left Gerald Ford, who became president later. And in September of 1964, it issued its report. It's called the Warren Report. But it really, in a way, raised more questions than it answered. And today, there are still lots of unanswered questions. about the Kennedy assassination.